Okay, so this screencast tutorial is going to take you through the steps required to enter basic metadata about your samples. So the idea is that when you've come back from the field, you've collected many samples from perhaps several sites. You want to try and get all this information from your field notes into the database as quickly as possible. Now, there are a number of ways to get your metadata into Tellervo, but probably the quickest way to get in large quantities of data is using the bulk data entry interface. So hopefully you've now got an understanding of the TriDes data standard, and you'll hopefully recognize along the top here we have three main tabs: objects, elements, and samples. These are sort of the three sort of key TriDes entities that we're going to be working with in this data entry form. So as you remember, hopefully, objects are the thing that you're working on. So for instance, ecologists, this was probably going to be something like a forest, whereas for dendroarchaeologists, this could well be some sort of archaeological site. So using this interface, we have basically like a sort of spreadsheet interface for entering this data, where we have a row for each entry. So on this first tab here, the objects tab, we can enter in the objects or the sites that we've been working on, and we just can simply type this in information directly into the spreadsheet. So we start out by coming up with a code for our site. So that's maybe ABC, for instance, and a title for the site. And then we decide what sort of entry this is. So as I say, I've been talking about sites. We can also add on extra fields to this table. So if we click on this on this button here, we can see there are a number of extra fields here that we haven't currently got highlighted. One in particular is the waypoint and latitude and longitude fields that you might find interesting. So in Tellervo we'll have automatic support for GPS data. So you'll see this satellite icon here. If we click on this, it gives us the option of loading up GPX files. Now these are standard GPS interchange files. So I've got one that I prepared earlier here. So you can create these files using a number of sort of applications for downloading data off of your GPS handset. One that I like to use is GPS Babel, which is an open source tool that you can download freely off the internet. So once we've loaded up that GPX files, you'll notice now that we have a pull down menu in the waypoint column, which gives you an entry for all the waypoints that you recorded in your when you're out in the field with your GPS. So all we need to do is select the correct waypoint, and you'll see that it's automatically pulled in the latitude and longitude from the GPX file. So this obviously saves you a great deal of time and can limit the sort of errors you introduce by typing in the values wrong. Okay, so that's sort of the entry for one object. You're quite likely to have multiple objects or sites that you've been working on. So what we can do there is we can just add a fresh row and continue on, or we can do if we select the row, we can do copy row. So if you've got sort of multiple sites with similar information, you can copy these down and then change the values that you need to change. And change the waypoints, for instance. And the final stage you need to do is press the import button. So if we do that now, there we are. They've all been successfully imported into our database. So that's with those objects coming through. The next tab is the elements tab. So if you remember again from TriDes, the element is it represents a piece of wood from a single tree. So for ecologists, this would be the tree itself, and for archaeologists, this will be perhaps a beam from a building. So basically the same sort of idea. This time we need to. The first column here is the parent object, so we need to select which site this particular element is from. So we just grab a site and give it a code. So this will be, for instance, the first tree from site CCC, and then we also can select which species this particular tree is. Now we're using the control vocabulary here is determined from the catalogue of life, which is a standard reference for taxonomy. So here we can choose the genus Abies. And again, there are a number of additional fields that you can pick in here. So you can again, you can specify waypoints and latitude and longitude. So if you've taken a GPS reference from every single tree, you can add that information here. You can have various slope information. You can have information about the soils, the bedrock, all of which can be added here, depending on, obviously these aren't going to be relevant to everyone, so you can turn them on and off as is useful to you. And so once you've done your entry here, we can do copying again. So if you've got, you're quite likely to have many trees from a single site. So again, you can do the copy rows so that you don't have to retype in every single piece of information. So obviously that the object is going to be the same each time, and quite often the species will be the same each time. So by using the copy row, you can save yourself time. But once you've entered all information, you can then just do import selected again, and there we have an error. Okay, so one thing to note with Tellervo at the moment is we've got there are still rough edges with the tools. So one particular area we want to improve in the future is the error messaging. At the moment, we're just getting the raw sort of error messages straight back from the database, which, as you can see, aren't terribly intuitive. So in the future, we're hoping to sort of to grab these errors as they come back from the database and give you a much more plain English description. But hopefully you'll be able to understand if you read this carefully what's going on. So for instance, here we have a duplicate key as violating a constraint. So at the moment, this means that we've got there's already an element number 1 for object CCC already in the database. So what we need to do is change that to a different value, so 10, and let's try again, and there we go. So that's now imported. And finally, the samples tab. So again, exactly the same information here. So we can we need to pick the parent object and the parent element. So that's the object and elements that we've previously added. And then we need to give this sample a code. So the way we generally work is we give our objects sort of several letter code, and then our elements numerically, a sequential numerical value, and then the samples we give sequential letter values. So for instance here, this sample would be CCC 10A, and then we can select what sort of type of sample it is, whether it's a core, whether it's a section, and these other values there. And we can also at this point, if you want to, you can also specify which box this sample is going to be added to. So if you've already entered box information into the database, you can then assign your sample to a box directly here. And again, there are additional fields that you can fill in if you're interested. And so again, we can do, we can copy rows if you need. Again, you're probably more than likely, well, let's do that right now. So we can have a B sample from that same tree, and we can assign that to the same box. and again you'd fill in as many rows as you needed, and at the end you would do the import selected, and you see that's now imported successfully. The next stage, you also have this button at the top here for printing barcodes. So once you've entered in all your objects from your field collection, all your trees and all your samples, you can then go ahead and use this button here to create, so that Tellervo will automatically create you a barcode for each of your samples. So obviously this is just a test database, but you would have your lab name entered here with the unique barcode for your sample, and then a human readable code for that particular sample. So you'll see here the two samples I've entered are both from this CCC object, and they were both from tree 10, but we have an A and a B sample. So you can then go ahead and print that just on the standard through your standard printer using what we use is a full letter size page of archive quality label material, which we can then guillotine into separate labels. Now these are designed to fit on the side of a standard call mount, we could theoretically set this up for standard size labels, but we find that there are no standard manufacturer labels that will fit on the side of call mounts successfully, so we've come up with this as the best solution for now. Okay, so I think that's hopefully that's given you an idea of exactly the main procedure for how to enter your data as you come back when you come back from the field. If you have any problems with this, please get in touch, and I'll do my best to help you through. Thank you very much.